You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start with Cardinals Seahawks. I was wrong about who would win this game. I did pick the Cardinals. I went with an upset. Maybe I was blinded by their epic win last week. But I was right in saying this would be an incredibly close game. The biggest lead that any team had was 10. And that was the lead that the Seahawks had at the half after Jason Myers hit the chip shot field goal. Sometimes what happens with young teams is that when they're in a big game, they just can't pull it out because they don't have that experience. And that's what happened with the Cardinals here. They're a young team, a very talented team. They have a very talented quarterback. And they have a head coach who I like. I mean, I said it yesterday. When Cliff Kingsbury was hired by the Cardinals, I was extremely skeptical. I hated the decision to hire him. Didn't think he'd work out in the pros. Didn't like the decision to dump Josh Rosen for Kyler Murray. But it seems like that was the right decision. I really think the Cardinals are on the right track. I wouldn't get too upset over this loss. Yes, this sets you back in your quest to win the NFC West. But at the end of the day, you arrived here ahead of schedule. It seems like you're gonna make the playoffs. If the season ended today, you'd have the final wildcard spot. You'd go up against the Saints. For a team with a second-year quarterback and a second-year head coach, that's really impressive to have a playoff spot in their sights this late into the season. Now, the one thing I'll say is that Kingsbury didn't call the greatest game I've ever seen. You've got to do a better job in getting Kenyon Drake involved. Drake only had 11 carries yesterday for 29 yards. I understand that the Seahawks have a great rushing defense. As bad as their defense is in totality, in terms of rushing yards allowed per game, they have the third best rushing defense in the NFL. Part of that is that they traded for Jamal Adams. Fantastic at defending the run, not so good in defending the pass. The touchdown pass to Chase Edmonds went right over Adams' head. I don't know what Adams was doing. He wasn't going after Kyler Murray. He wasn't anywhere near him. Go after Chase Edmonds. I mean, it was a great pass by Murray. He did a great job in withstanding the pressure that the Seahawks brought. He was still able to deliver accurate throws. For a second-year quarterback to be able to do that, that's really impressive. But there was one run where Jamal Adams got really burned yesterday, in the open field, Kyler Murray put a nice little juke on Adams. That was nice to see. In case you can't tell, I'm rooting against Jamal Adams. It made my heart happy to see him have that absolutely terrible game yesterday. But in all seriousness, you're the offensive guru. You've got to be able to scheme something together to get Drake more involved. To only have 57 rushing yards in a game, that's inexcusable. And the play calling on that 2-minute drive, you have a good thing going with the underneath passes. It's methodical. These 6 to 12 yard passes were getting you on the Seahawks side of the field. Then you call a run up the middle that worked. Alright, Chase Edmonds got 11 yards. No one was expecting it, so, it worked, but the clock kept going. I'd rather the clock keep going on a pass, not a run. With a pass, at least you have the chance to get out of bounds. A run up the middle, there's no way you're getting out of bounds. After the run, it was an incomplete pass to Christian Kirk, 2 shots to the end zone that fell incomplete, and then Kyler Murray got sacked. What was the need for the run up the middle? What was the need for the deep shots? Just keep going with these short passes. These 6-yard passes. They were working. There was no reason to go so crazy. There were a lot of Cardinals fans on Twitter right after the game that were really ticked off at Kingsbury. I understand that he called a bad end to the game, but you're not going to fire him. Okay, that's not going to happen. This was a game that the Cardinals could have won. Murray had a really good game. Completed 29 of his 42 passes. Threw for 269 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. Got a bunch of his pass catchers involved. Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk. He even found a way to get Drake and Edmonds involved. It's a tough loss. I get it. But you don't need to go too crazy over it. This was a big game, there's no question. But no one's job was on the line here. You're allowed to be upset at Kingsbury for the play calling late. You're allowed to be upset at J.R. Sweezy for committing the safety. But you're in a good spot with Kingsbury and Murray overall. You're not going to do anything crazy. As for the Seahawks, I'm going to tell you why they won this game. The seminal reason that they won this game was because of their fantastic ability to extend drives. The Seahawks were 8 for 14 on third down. Whenever the Cardinals had an opportunity to stop the Seahawks and flip momentum, the Seahawks came up with a big third down conversion. The Seahawks won the time of possession battle by over 10 minutes. There was a point during the game where the Cardinals only had the ball for 5 minutes. The Seahawks had it for 16. And in addition to extending drives, Russell Wilson was extending plays. He did such an amazing job at extending plays so he could throw that deep ball, whether it was to DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. The touchdown pass to Metcalf was a thing of beauty. And a great job by Metcalf, too. Wilson did a good job of extending plays with his legs. He had 10 carries for 42 yards. How can you stop him? He can kill you with his arm. He can kill you with his legs. It's incredible what Wilson did yesterday. I understand that he does it every week, but that just makes it more incredible. We've gotten so accustomed to seeing it that we don't realize its awesomeness. There are very few quarterbacks that can do what Russell Wilson does. He's a future Hall of Famer. There's no question about that. Another big reason the Seahawks won was because of their running backs. Chris Carson was questionable for this game. He was held out. So it was Carlos Hyde carrying most of the load with Bo Scarborough mixed in a little bit. Both of them averaged over 5 yards a carry. This is a Seahawks team that has struggled to find a consistent running game without Russell Wilson being the one running the football. If Hyde and Scarborough can have more games like they had yesterday, the Seahawks have something. Hyde is a talented running back. And Bo Scarborough can be a solid backup. Hyde was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. He has what it takes to carry the load. And Scarborough didn't have a bad year last year for the Lions in limited time. It wouldn't stun me if Hyde and Scarborough carried the load for the Seahawks going forward and did a good job doing it. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Before I make my NFL picks, there is one other NFL story that I want to talk about. And that is the Saints starting Taysom Hill over Jameis Winston. Taysom Hill, for the first time in his NFL career, will start a game at quarterback. I gotta tell ya, I'm all for it. We know what Jameis Winston is as a starter in the NFL. Does he have moments where he looks really good? The answer is yes. But does he have moments that make you absolutely furious? The answer is yes. We don't know what Hill's going to do as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Give him a chance. In the offseason, Jay Glazer said that the Saints are comfortable with Hill as their quarterback of the future. That's how they view him. No time like the present to show it. And he's going up against a bad Falcons team. A Falcons team with a terrible defense. When Glazer said that Hill was viewed by the Saints as their quarterback of the future, it was met with skepticism. But you know what? If he balls out while Breeze is hurt, no one will be laughing. This is Hill's time. Let's see what he can do. I think this is the right decision by Sean Payton. And I'll tell you, it wouldn't surprise me if Hill played well. I like Taysom Hill. I like him a lot. Very exciting player to watch. The thing that I don't like about him is sometimes he's used when Breeze is really cooking. You know, he's completed a bunch of passes in a row. The Saints are driving. And next thing you know, Hill's in at quarterback. That doesn't work for me. But you know what? That's not going to happen here. Could we see Jameis Winston? I guess it's possible you could see him for a handful of plays. But I think the Saints are going to unleash Hill. The Falcons have a good rush defense. They've allowed under 100 rushing yards per game. They're the 6th best rushing defense in the NFL. So Hill's going to have to throw the football. That's where the Falcons are vulnerable. Let's see if Hill can do it. Let's see if he's capable of killing teams with his arm. He's probably going to be asked to throw about 20 passes. This is a guy who's only attempted 18 passes in the NFL. Now, obviously, he's thrown more than 20 passes in a game in college. At BYU, he did do that. But there's a reason that the Saints have used him more as a gadget player. When he was asked to throw the ball at BYU, he didn't look that good. So it's going to be a really interesting game on Sunday. I think it's the right decision by the Saints. If they really view Hill as a franchise quarterback going forward, this is his time to prove that they made the right determination. If he implodes, the Saints know what they have to do going forward. Start Winston, and then look for Breeze's heir apparent again. Again, I like Taysom Hill. I love watching him play. I don't like when he's used in that momentum-destroying role. I want him to be used when the Saints offense needs a little jolt. You know, if you want to have him as a blocker or a receiver, I don't mind that. But don't ask him to play quarterback when Breeze is cooking. That's the one thing I don't like. But I think Hill will do a solid job against the Falcons. I really do. Now, I'm not going to say definitively that he's the quarterback of the future for the Saints. He's going to have to prove that on Sunday, but you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if he did prove it. Alright, now it's time for me to make my 3 NFL picks. I went 1-1-1 last week. Let's see if I can make you some money this week. I like the Browns -3 over the Eagles. Both teams are going to be hungry in this one. The Eagles are going to be ticked off after losing to the Giants. And the Browns are going to be ticked off that they only scored 10 points against a terrible Texans team. So in that situation, you have to take the team with the better roster. The Browns have the better roster. There's no question about that. Baker Mayfield is better than Carson Wentz. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are a million times better than Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. The Browns pass catchers, even without Odell Beckham Jr., are light years better than the Eagles pass catchers. Give me the Browns -3, and give me the Chargers -9.5 over the Jets. I understand that the Jets played well on Monday Night Football against the Patriots. Flacco had a vintage Flacco performance. Rashad Perriman had a great game. Denzel Mims balled out. But there's no way that the Jets are going to be able to do that again. The Chargers are a better team than the Patriots. I don't care what the records say. Yes, the Chargers are reeling right now, but there's no better cure for a reeling team than to go up against the Jets. Justin Herbert is going to slice and dice this Jets defense like there's no tomorrow. They are going to have no answer for him. And do you really think Joe Flacco's going to have 2 vintage Flacco games in a row? Do you think Rashad Perriman's going to catch 2 touchdown passes again? The Jets are going to lose by double digits. There's no way around it. There was a time earlier in this season where this game was viewed as a winnable game for the Jets, but not anymore. The Jets are going to lose by double digits. It's just that simple. Give me the Chargers minus 9.5. As for my upset, I like the Packers to cover the 2-point spread. I don't know how they're underdogs. I understand that the Colts have a really good defense. But look what happened when they went up against some quarterbacks with talent. Baker Mayfield beat him. Joe Burrow put up 27 on him. Matthew Stafford put up 21 on him. Lamar Jackson beat him. Aaron Rodgers is gonna find a way to beat this Colts defense. And I'll tell you, watch out for Marquise Valdes-Scantling. He's had some big games recently. He had 2 touchdown catches against the Niners early this month. And last Sunday, he caught 4 passes for 149 yards, including a 78-yard touchdown. If the Colts key in on Devontae Adams, watch out for Valdes-Scantling. I'm not that sold on the Colts. I know they have a really good defense, but their offense doesn't scare me at all. I think the Packers are the much better team. Give me the Packers plus 2. So my picks are Browns minus 3, Chargers minus 9.5, and Packers plus 2. Alright, now I'll give you some NBA Valk talk. As I was getting ready to post yesterday's show, the news came out that Klay Thompson tore his Achilles and will be out for the whole season. Now, as I was recording that show, I didn't know the severity of the injury. I said Nico Mannion could start for him and hold his own. And I stand by that. I think Mannion would have done a solid job as the Warriors' starting shooting guard, but the Warriors are going to have the luxury of bringing him into the league at a slower pace because they traded their protected first rounder next year to the Thunder for Kelly Oubre Jr. We don't know exactly what the protection is. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN said it's protected from 11 to 30. Anthony Slater of The Athletic said it's protected 1 to 20. But both of them said if it doesn't convey next year, it'll turn into 2 second-rounders. But either way, this is a fantastic trade for the Warriors. It makes sense for the Thunder too, but the Warriors are the big winners here. We have 2 winners. We have a bunch of winners. The Warriors won because now they get to put out a starting lineup of Steph Curry, Andrew Wiggins, Kelly Oubre, Draymond Green, and James Wiseman. Good luck, Western Conference. The Thunder won because they got another first-round pick. We all know how much Sam Presti loves his first-rounders. He now has, I think, 18 in the next 6 drafts. If he doesn't hit on at least half those picks, I weep for Thunder fans. At the end of the day, picks mean nothing unless you use them correctly. Do I think Presti will use them correctly? Yes. But people are saying that it's a guarantee that the Thunder are going to be able to rebuild and have success like they did with Durant, Westbrook, and Harden all those years ago. It's not a guarantee. Do I think it'll happen? I think the Thunder will be a really, really, really good team going forward. I think Sam Presti's the right guy to use those draft picks correctly, but it's not a guarantee. The third winner is Kelly Oubre, because he goes from a dismal team in the Thunder to a team that, while you may not consider them a title threat, they're gonna make the playoffs. Oubre last year had a career year. He averaged just under 19 points a game, just under 6.5 rebounds per game, 1.5 assists per game. I mean, if you put him in that Warriors starting lineup, you have 5 guys that can kill you. You've got 2 guys that can kill you on the interior. You've got 3 really good perimeter players. 1 elite one in Curry, and 2 really good ones in Oubre and Wiggins. I understand that Oubre and Wiggins aren't great 3-point shooters, but from the mid-range, they're pretty darn good. Great trade for the Warriors. They won this trade more than the Thunder. The Thunder did a good job in getting another first-rounder. I'm not begrudging them by any stretch. And I do think that down the line, they're gonna turn into a great team. Sam Presti has shown that he can turn these picks into stars. But the Warriors won it more because they basically guaranteed themselves a spot in the playoffs next year. I don't see how you're stopping that starting lineup. Curry, Wiggins, Oubre, Green, and Wiseman. Good God. It's amazing how the Warriors are always able to do this. Find a way to add great players. Kevin Durant, D'Angelo Russell, Andrew Wiggins, now Kelly Oubre. Alright, maybe Wiggins and Oubre aren't great, but they're really, really good. It really boggles the mind. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. And there are a few games that I want to preview. I'll start with a big Big Ten showdown. two top 10 teams going at it, Indiana versus OSU. I've spoken about Indiana before. I like watching Michael Penix Jr. play. I understand he's not the flashiest quarterback in the world, but every game, you know what you're going to get from him. You're going to get a really good performance. He's going to make smart decisions. He's always going to put the Hoosiers in a position to win. I just like watching Penix play. I also like watching Stevie Scott play. I think he's one of the more underrated running backs in the nation. Whop Phillier is a really good wide receiver. Ty Freifogel is questionable for this game, so OSU is going to be able to key in on Phillier. It's going to be interesting to see how Tom Allen adapts to that. And what a fantastic job he's done with Indiana these past 2 seasons. No one expected Indiana to be this good this year. No one. I mean, I'll tell you, if Indiana wins tomorrow, you'd have a tough time leaving them out of the CFP. They'd have the signature win. They're in the Big Ten. Let's go. I'm all for it. This is what makes college football great. I mean, they have the defense to stop Justin Fields. Jalen Williams is one of the better defensive backs in the nation. Taiwan Mullen, Micah McFadden, and Jerome Johnson are all really good at getting after the quarterback. This game is going to be closer than people think. The Buckeyes are currently favored by 20. Give me Indiana. I think they're going to cover the 20-point spread. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win. In fact, I can say with confidence that they're not going to win. There's no way they go into the horseshoe and beat OSU. But it's going to be a really, really good game. When you look at the Buckeyes, obviously it starts with Justin Fields. The guy's only thrown 11 incompletions this year. You know how many touchdowns he has? 11. You know how many touchdowns he has counting his rushing touchdowns? 13. Those are video game-like numbers. To have more total touchdowns than incompletions. Fields has basically guaranteed that he's going to be the second overall pick. As it stands right now, the Jets and Jaguars are 1-2. So Lawrence is going to go 1 to the Jets, assuming he declares, and Fields, assuming he declares, will be a Jaguar. Even though I've said that the Jaguars don't need a quarterback. They need more help on defense than they do offense. If they stay at 2, they'd be insane to pass on Fields. But I do think they could trade down, and they would get a king's ransom for that pick. I can certainly make the argument that that would be the best scenario for the Jaguars. You take a look at the players that Fields has around him. At running back, Master Teague and Trey Sermon. At wide receiver, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. You'd be hard-pressed to find 5 better offensive players on one team in the nation than Fields, Teague, Sermon, Wilson, and Olave. Defensively, though, the Buckeyes are vulnerable. There's only one guy there that scares me, and that's Tommy Togiai. I know I butchered that name. I'm sorry. Everyone should be named John Smith. I'm telling you. But, look, He's by far and away the best player on the OSU defense. He already has 3 sacks. I'm not saying the Buckeyes have a bad defense. They don't. They have a really good defense. But there's only one guy that you have to key in on if you're going up against them. But just to reiterate, I don't think Indiana's beaten OSU. I do think they're going to cover the 20-point spread. But I think the Buckeyes are going to win this game. Moving on now to another Big Ten game. Wisconsin versus Northwestern. In the Badgers' 2 games this year, even without Jack Cohn and Chase Wolf, their top 2 quarterbacks on the depth chart, the Badgers have looked like one of the best teams in the nation. Graham Mertz has stepped in and has been sensational. He's completed just under 75% of his passes. He's thrown 7 touchdowns to no interceptions. Keep an eye on Mertz going forward. I think he's going to have a great college career. Wisconsin has a committee approach at running back. Nakia Watson, Jalen Berger, and Garrett Groshek will all get carries. And that carries over to their passing game. The thing that Mertz does really well is he gets all his receivers involved. Danny Davis, Kendrick Pryor, Groshek out of the backfield. Chamir Dyke has gotten some big catches. But their best pass catcher by far is their tight end, Jake Ferguson. One of the best tight ends in the nation. This is a pro-style offense that Wisconsin has. It bodes really well for Mertz going forward. I understand it's way too early to be saying this, but it wouldn't surprise me if in a couple years we talked about Mertz as a very, very good quarterback prospect. Defensively, Wisconsin has dominated. They've only allowed 18 points. That's it. Illinois only got 7 points against them. Michigan only got 11. There's no one great player on defense for Wisconsin, but they're clicking on all cylinders right now. This is a scary Wisconsin team. It wouldn't surprise me if Paul Chryst got some NFL buzz. That's how great a job he's done. As for Northwestern, they're all defense, no offense. Peyton Ramsey isn't a good quarterback. Isaiah Bowser isn't a good running back. I mean, they've got a few good players on offense. I like Drake Anderson. I like Ramon Bowman, and I like John Rain. But at the end of the day, Anderson is misused, and Bowman and Rain's effectiveness is limited by the fact that Peyton Ramsey's their quarterback. But defensively, they are great. Andrew Leota, Adetomiwa Adebowale, I'm sure I butchered that, because of course I did, and Brandon Joseph have had really good seasons so far. I'll say this, if any team can slow down the Wisconsin offense, it just may be Northwestern. But one thing we've learned in this college season is that a great offense can beat a great defense. I don't think the Wildcats are going to win this one. Give me Wisconsin. Moving on now to a Big 12 game. One of the biggest rivalries in all of college football. Bedlam is back. Oklahoma State versus Oklahoma. A very underrated rivalry. When you look at their offense, Oklahoma State is centered around two guys, Chuba Hubbard and Tylan Wallace. Hubbard is one of the best running backs in the nation, and Tylan Wallace is one of the best wide receivers in the nation. Now, both of these guys are banged up entering this game. Wallace is probable, that's been undisclosed, but Chuba Hubbard is questionable with a lower leg injury. If he doesn't play, the Cowboys have no chance. I mean, the one thing I don't like about Oklahoma State is they have these two great offensive talents, but they don't have a quarterback to help them out. I don't care who's under center. Spencer Sanders, Shane Illingworth, Ethan Bullock. No one's going to be mistaking these guys for Mason Rudolph or Brandon Whedon anytime soon. I mean, Illingworth is young, he's a freshman, I'm not giving up on him, but it's taken him some time to get a grip of the offense. Defensively, though, Oklahoma State is scary. They have probably the best pass rush in the nation. Calvin Bundage, Tyler Lacey, Trace Ford, Amen Ogbongbemiga. Couldn't be Smith, couldn't be Adams, couldn't be Peters. Had to begin with an O. God bless America. Malcolm Rodriguez is really good. Devin Harper's really good. Brock Martin, Cameron Murray, Sione Ossie, Tyron Irby. All those guys have gotten sacks this year. All those guys are good at getting after the quarterback. Spencer Rattler is going to have his hands full in this one. I haven't been overly impressed with Rattler when I've watched him. Lincoln Riley's done a good job in getting the most out of him, but no one's going to be mistaking him for Landry Jones anytime soon. I mean, the thing that Lincoln Riley's done really well is surround Rattler with a bunch of really talented offensive playmakers. TJ Pledger, Seth McGowan, and Ramondre Stevenson are really talented running backs. And Marvin Mims, Theo Weiss, Charleston Rambo, Drake Stoops, Theo Howard, and Jeremiah Hall are all talented pass catchers. Austin Stogner is hurt for the Sooners, but I don't think that's going to kill him too much. Defensively, the Sooners are really talented. Nick Benito, Isaiah Thomas, Deshaun White, Marcus Stripling, Trey Norwood, and Trey Brown. This is a really tough game for me to pick. It wouldn't surprise me if either team won, but I think the Cowboys defense is going to be a little too much for Spencer Rattler to handle. I like Lincoln Riley. Would love it if he came to the Jets. But I think it's going to be just a little too much. Give me Oklahoma State in Bedlam. I do want to talk about the death of Jake Scott, who died yesterday at the age of 75 after hitting his head when he fell. From the early to mid-70s, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better safety than Jake Scott. And he had to grind to earn his spot in the NFL. Even though he was an All-American in 1968 and would later go into the College Football Hall of Fame, he was picked in the 7th round of the 1970 NFL Draft. Part of that may be because he started his professional career with the BC Lions of the Canadian Football League in 1969. But Scott was really talented in college. He just didn't get used a lot in the CFL. You gotta wonder what those other GMs were smoking. In every year, from 1971 to 1975, Scott made the Pro Bowl and an All-Pro team. In 73 and 74, he was first-team All-Pro, and the other years, he was second-team All-Pro. His greatest moment came on January 14th, 1973. The Dolphins were one win away from doing the unthinkable, finishing a season undefeated. They went 14-0 in the regular season. They beat the Browns, they beat the Steelers. They were going up against the Redskins in Super Bowl VII. Scott had one of the greatest games a defensive player has ever had in the history of the Super Bowl. He had 2 interceptions, returned one for 8 yards, the other one for 55 yards, as the Dolphins capped off the only true undefeated season in NFL history by winning the Super Bowl 14-7. Because it was a low-scoring game, and Scott had 2 interceptions, he won Super Bowl MVP. He was the second defensive player ever to win Super Bowl MVP. Chuck Howley was the first. The year after that, the Dolphins went back to the Super Bowl. No one remembers that. After the perfect season, they kept on winning. They went 12-2 in the regular season. They beat the Bengals and Raiders in the playoffs and ended up facing the Vikings in Super Bowl VIII. Scott had a big role in that Super Bowl win too. He had 2 fumble recoveries, made 3 tackles, but Larry Zonka was insane in that Super Bowl. He had 33 carries for 145 yards. Scott wasn't going to repeat as Super Bowl MVP. That had to be Zonka. But in Super Bowl VIII, Scott became the first player to recover 2 fumbles in a Super Bowl. He's also the only player in Super Bowl history to recover one of his own team's fumbles and one of his opponent's fumbles in a single Super Bowl. Thank you, Wikipedia. He finished his career with the team that he beat in Super Bowl VII, the Washington Redskins. And Scott was good for him, but he wasn't great. He was a very humble man, kept to himself, didn't seek the spotlight. Before Super Bowl 50, when the NFL brought back all the former Super Bowl MVPs, Jake Scott stayed home. He didn't want the spotlight. He didn't like the spotlight. He wanted other people to have it. That was the kind of person he was. There are some people that say that Scott should be in the Hall of Fame. He's in the Pro Football Researchers Association's Hall of Very Good. You can make the argument for him to be in the Hall of Fame. I'll tell you, he was that dominant. I sincerely hope that he rests in peace. Let me outline the next 8 days for you. Sunday, New York Jets instant recap. Monday, big football recap. Maybe some baseball, maybe some hockey, depending on what happens. I don't know. I'm going to save all the basketball stuff for Tuesday. I'm going to go team by team, recapping all the big moves that broke from now onwards. Thursday and Friday, Thanksgiving and Black Friday, no shows. The Sunday after that, when the Jets play the Dolphins, you'll get another Instant Jets recap. The schedule will be normal from then onwards. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying, everyone line up alphabetically according to your height.